The most terrifying sound I've ever heard in my life didn't come from any animal. It didn't come from any person. It came from the stone. I was 43 meters below the surface of Derinkuyu, Turkey, and the air around me was disappearing. And then I heard it, a rhythmic sound, deep, organic, like a slow, heavy breathing coming from somewhere ahead of me, where my flashlight could no longer reach. When I turned my head back, the tunnel was empty. But when I turned forward again, the dust was moving on its own, as if something was sucking everything, light, air, and perhaps even my sanity, into the absolute darkness. Before we begin, what city and country are you listening from right now? Leave it in the comments. I need to know this story won't disappear into silence. My name is Daniel Armitage. I'm 37 years old. A geologist graduated from the University of Colorado, and I've spent the last 8 years documenting ancient cave systems around the world. I've been to Waitomo, New Zealand. I've descended into Krubera Voronia in the Caucasus. I've mapped caves in the Yucatan that no one had visited since the Mayan collapse. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for Derinkuyu. It all started 3 days before that descent. I was in Nevşehir, a small city in Turkish Cappadocia, trying for weeks to get official access to the restricted areas of the region's most famous underground city. Derinkuyu is world-renowned. Tens of thousands of tourists visit its chambers every year. 8 levels open to the public, ancient tunnels carved millennia ago into soft volcanic tuff. But what I wanted wasn't on the tourist maps. I wanted the 9th level. It was Dr. Kayra who told me about it. I met the old retired geophysicist in a dusty cafe in downtown Nevşehir, after a research colleague from Istanbul Technical University passed me his contact. Kayra was 82 years old, with trembling hands and an obsession that burned in his sunken eyes like ancient embers. We sat at a table in the back, away from the windows. He ordered tea. I ordered Turkish coffee, and then he opened an old, worn folder full of yellow documents. "The official chambers go down to level 8, he began, stirring sugar into his tea with mechanical movements. "But there's a 9th level. It's not on the maps, it's not in the guides, and it hasn't been opened since 1972. I leaned forward, feeling that familiar tingling at the back of my neck. That sensation of being about to discover something that shouldn't exist. "Why?" I asked. Kayra looked around as if someone might be listening. Then he lowered his voice. "Because 3 archaeologists died there. Officially, it was structural collapse. Officially, the entrance was sealed to protect tourists." I waited. I knew there was more. "And unofficially?" He smiled, but there was no humor in that smile, just exhaustion, and something that might have been fear. "Unofficially, they went mad before they died." Kayra slid a black and white photograph across the table. It showed 3 young men standing at the entrance of a tunnel, with mining helmets and flashlights, all smiling, all alive. "Ahmet Dogan, Mehmet Yildiz, and Cemal Arslan," said Kayra, pointing at each face. "Archaeologists from the University of Ankara, May 1972. They got special permission to explore unmapped tunnels below the 8th level." "And what did they find?" Kayra opened another document, a typed report with official stamps. But in the margins someone had scribbled notes by hand, desperate notes. For the first 3 days, everything was normal. They documented chambers, took measurements, collected rock samples. But on the 4th day, he paused, as if the words weighed heavily. Dogan sent a letter to the department. He said they had found something strange. Strange how? Marks on the walls. Excavation marks that didn't correspond to any known tools of the era. They weren't smooth like those made with bronze chisels. They weren't irregular like those made with stone. They were undulating, as if something had melted the rock or corroded it. I felt a chill, but kept my expression neutral. I'd seen strange geological formations before, chemical erosion, acidic water flows, nothing that required supernatural explanations. "And the sound," continued Kayra, pulling another sheet from the folder. "Dogan wrote that the sound in the tunnel was impossible." "Impossible how?" He handed me the original letter. Then paper yellowed with tight cursive handwriting. I read in silence, my rudimentary Turkish stumbling over the words, but catching the essence. The tunnel breathes. It's not a metaphor, it's literal. We can hear inhalation and exhalation. We recorded it with the equipment. The spectrogram shows perfect harmonic frequencies, as if the rock were a giant musical instrument. Mehmet says it's atmospheric pressure. I want to believe him. But when I close my eyes, I swear I hear words. I looked up at Kayra, and what happened next? Next, he said, his voice somber, they descended deeper, and only one came back. Kayra told the rest slowly, like someone reporting an inevitable accident. Ahmet Dogan crawled out of the tunnel on the 6th day, alone, covered in a thin layer of volcanic dust that stuck to his skin like wet ash. Eyes wide open, hands bleeding. He was screaming that the stone was breathing, that everything down there breathed, that Mehmet and Cemal were still there, but that they weren't themselves anymore. The guards took him to the hospital in Nevşehir, but 3 hours later, Ahmet Dogan died, suffocated, his lungs full of microscopic dust, so fine it seemed like talcum powder, as if he had inhaled pure sand for hours. Acute silicosis, I said, recognizing the symptoms. Volcanic dust. It's toxic if inhaled in large quantities. Yes, agreed Kayra, but that doesn't explain the rest. The rest? He slid the last sheet across the table, a hand-drawn map with irregular lines representing tunnels, and in the lower corner a note in faded red ink. I felt my heart race, not from fear, not yet, but from curiosity, that dangerous curiosity that always got me into trouble. The bodies of the other two were never found, said Kayra. The entrance was officially sealed, but 6 months ago, a small earthquake, 4.2 on the Richter scale, opened a lateral fissure. A shepherd found it, didn't report it. But I found out. He looked directly into my eyes. You want to go down, don't you? I should have lied. Should have said I only wanted to document the history. But the truth is, I never knew how to lie well. Yes, I replied, I do. Kayra slowly closed the folder. Then he pulled something from his coat pocket. An old, rusty key. This opens the access gate to level 8. From there you can reach the fissure. But I need you to understand one thing, Daniel. What? If you go down, don't take anyone with you, and don't stay too long, because whatever it was that Ahmet Dogan heard in that tunnel, he paused. And for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. He wasn't the only one to hear it. 2 days later, I was alone at the entrance to level 8 of Derinkuyu, with Kayra's key in my hand and a backpack full of equipment. And that's when I heard it for the first time. That sound, deep, rhythmic, coming from somewhere far, far below, as if something ancient was waiting. The underground city of Derinkuyu was carved more than 3,000 years ago, maybe 4. Nobody knows for sure. The Hittites may have started it, the Phrygians expanded it. Byzantine Christians used it as refuge during Arab invasions. At its peak, it sheltered about 20,000 people, entire families, living in darkness, with churches, wineries, stables, all carved into the soft volcanic rock. But that was official history, tourism, postcards. What I was looking for went far beyond that. I entered Derinkuyu at 5 in the morning, before the first tour buses arrived. Kayra's key opened the service gate without problems. I descended the known levels quickly, 1, 2, 3, 4. Spacious chambers, well lit during the day, now plunged into twilight. My headlamp cut the darkness in narrow slices. On the 5th level I began to feel the change. The air became denser, colder. It had a different smell. Not exactly bad, but ancient, like wet earth mixed with something metallic. On the 6th level, the silence changed quality. It was no longer absence of sound. It was presence of silence, as if something was listening. I shook my head, dismissing the thought. You're tired, I muttered to myself. You slept 3 hours. That's all. On the 7th level, I found the first marks, scratches on the walls. Not touristic, not accidental, deep, desperate. Someone had tried to climb the smooth wall, leaving nail and finger marks in the rock. Ancient, recent, impossible to tell. On the 8th level, I stopped. I consulted the map Kayra had given me. According to his notes, the fissure opened by the earthquake was on the north wall of the main chamber, hidden behind a pile of rocks that looked natural, but wasn't. It took me 15 minutes to find it, and another 10 to remove enough rocks to reveal the opening. It was narrow, very narrow, about 50 centimeters wide, irregular, with sharp edges. The kind of passage that forces you to enter sideways, scraping shoulders and hips on rock. I knelt at the entrance and shone the flashlight inside. The tunnel descended at a 45-degree angle. The walls were different from the official chambers, not smooth, not uniform, undulating, as if something had melted the rock or corroded it, exactly as Ahmet Dogan had described. I stood there for a time I can't measure. 30 seconds, 3 minutes, long enough for a rational voice in my head to start shouting, "Don't do this, turn back, call the authorities, do it the right way." But I never did things the right way. I adjusted my backpack, checked the equipment one more time, headlamp, backup flashlight, 2 water bottles, radio, useless at this depth, but I carried it anyway, oxygen meter, notebook, pen, knife. And then I entered. The passage was tight, but not impossible. I'd crawled through worse. The problem wasn't the space. It was the feeling. The rock around me seemed alive, not hot, not cold, just present, as if it was aware of me. "Paranoia," I said aloud, just to hear my own voice. The sound came out muffled, swallowed by the stone. I descended for about 15 meters, using elbows and knees, when the tunnel finally opened into a small chamber. About 3 meters in diameter, low ceiling, floor covered in fine dust, almost like talc. And then I saw the first marks, not on the walls, on the floor, footprints or something like footprints, shallow impressions in the dust, as if someone had walked there barefoot. But the toes were too long, and there were many footprints, dozens, maybe hundreds, all pointing to the same place, an even narrower tunnel in the opposite wall. I knelt and ran my hand over one of the marks. The dust was incredibly fine. It stuck to my fingers like graphite powder. I brought it to the flashlight. Dark gray, almost black, with a strange sheen like mica, volcanic dust, pure. It shouldn't be here, not like this. Derinkuyu was carved into tuff, a porous rock formed by compacted volcanic ash millions of years ago. But this was loose powder, fresh, as if it had been deposited recently, or as if it was being constantly produced. I stored a sample in a plastic bag and stood up. That's when I heard it for the first time. That sound. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. It was subtle, constant, rhythmic, like breathing. I froze, literally froze, with my hands still in the backpack pocket, eyes fixed on the tunnel ahead. The sound was coming from there, from somewhere deep. It wasn't wind. Wind doesn't have rhythm. Wind doesn't inhale and exhale with metronome regularity. I pulled out the oxygen meter. The reading was normal, 19.8%, slightly below ideal, but nothing alarming. Atmospheric pressure, I muttered, remembering Kayra's words. Venturi effect. Air passing through irregular tunnels creates strange sounds. It's physics, just physics. But my voice sounded hollow, even to me. I took a deep breath, mistake, and felt the dust enter my lungs. I coughed. A dry cough, scraping. I spat. The saliva came out dark. Mask, I thought. I should have brought a mask. But it was too late, and I wasn't going back now. I entered the next tunnel. This one was different, narrower but also taller. I could walk, but sideways, with my body compressed between 2 rock walls that seemed to pulse subtly, not visually, but tactilely, as if the stone had its own vibration. I placed my hand on the wall, closed my eyes, felt. There was something, a low frequency, almost imperceptible, like those vibrations you feel near an industrial generator, but don't hear. I opened my eyes. The wall was covered with marks, not scratches this time, symbols, carved, sculpted, carefully drawn in the rock. They weren't Christian, they weren't Hittite, they weren't from any culture I recognized. They were geometric, spirals, concentric circles, wavy lines that seemed to represent flow, movement, breathing. And then I saw something that made my blood freeze. In the center of one of the larger symbols, someone had written in faded red ink, and below, in trembling letters, Everything breathes. That's when the flashlight flickered once, twice, and then it went out completely, leaving me in a darkness so absolute it seemed physical. And in that darkness, the sound of breathing became louder and much closer. If you're still with me on this descent, leave your like so this story doesn't disappear. Panic isn't something I feel often. 8 years exploring caves teaches you to control fear, to transform it into something productive. But there, in that narrow tunnel, in the most complete darkness I'd ever experienced, with the sound of breathing approaching, I felt it. My hands trembled as I searched for the backup flashlight in my backpack. My fingers hit objects, water bottle, meter, notebook, until they finally found the cold metal of the second flashlight. I pressed the button. Nothing. I pressed again and again, nothing. Impossible, I whispered. I checked the batteries yesterday, checked twice. But impossible or not, I was in the dark, and the sound continued. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. I closed my eyes, useless gesture in absolute darkness, and forced my brain to think rationally. I remembered a survival manual I'd read years ago. In the absence of light, your other senses compensate. Trust them. Touch, hearing, even smell. I extended my right hand and touched the wall. The rock was cold, but not freezing. Smooth in some parts, rough in others. I followed with my fingers until I found one of the carved marks, the spiral symbol I'd seen before. I traced the outlines slowly, memorizing the shape. There was something strange about the texture. The lines were deep, about 2 centimeters, but the edges weren't sharp as you'd expect from a sculpture made with a metal chisel. They were rounded, smooth, as if they'd been polished over centuries, or as if they'd never been carved with tools. The breathing sound changed subtly. It became slower, deeper, as if something large was falling asleep or waking up. My own breathing accelerated. I felt the dust entering my lungs again. I coughed, trying to muffle the sound with my hand, but in the absolute silence of the tunnel, each cough echoed like a gunshot. And then the sound stopped, completely. The silence that followed was worse than the sound, because now I had no reference at all, no light, no sound, just darkness and silence so dense they seemed to have physical weight. I stayed motionless, I don't know for how long. Seconds, minutes, time loses meaning in absolute darkness. And then I heard something else, not breathing, not wind, something scraping, metal against stone or bone against stone, coming from somewhere ahead of me. Deeper in the tunnel. My heart raced. All of Kayra's stories came back at once. Ahmet Dogan crawling out, screaming that Mehmet and Cemal weren't themselves anymore. The bodies never found. Stop, I told myself. You're hallucinating, lack of oxygen, dust in your lungs. Your brain is creating things. The scraping sound continued. Constant approaching. I backed up. Slowly, 1 step, 2. My back hit the opposite wall. I was trapped in that narrow section, without light, not knowing what was coming in my direction. That's when I felt something on my left hand, something warm, wet like a breath of air. I instinctively pulled my hand back and hit the low ceiling. Sharp pain shot through my skull. I saw stars, literally points of light dancing in the self-imposed darkness. And in those points of light, for a fraction of a second, I swear I saw a shape. Not human, not animal, just shape. Tall, bent, with limbs too long. I blinked, the shape disappeared. Hallucination, I repeated, now aloud, almost shouting. It's just hallucination. But my hands were already in the backpack, desperately searching for anything that could generate light. Matches? Didn't have any. Lighter? I don't smoke. My cell phone. Why the hell didn't I think of that before? I pulled my cell phone from the side pocket of my backpack. The screen lit up. Weak light, bluish, but light. Glorious light. I pointed forward. The tunnel was empty, completely empty. No shapes, no presences. Just rock, dust, and more symbols carved on the walls. I took a deep breath, feeling relief wash over me like cold water. Hallucination. I knew it. But then I looked down at the floor covered in dust. And I saw the marks, new marks, that weren't there before. They weren't footprints. They were trails, as if something heavy had been dragged through the dust. 3 parallel trails, each about 5 centimeters wide, going from the back of the tunnel to where I was standing, stopping exactly where I felt that breath of hot air on my hand. My mind raced. I tried to find rational explanations. Airflow moving the dust, but the trails were too deep. Animals at this depth? Impossible. I used the phone's light to examine the surrounding walls. The symbols continued. Spirals, circles, wavy lines. But now I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Some of the symbols weren't just carved in the rock. They were filled with something dark, organic, like ink, but not exactly. It smelled of iron, of wet earth, of something rotting very, very slowly. I touched it with my fingertip. It stuck. I brought it to the light. Dark red, almost black. Blood? Impossible to tell. Too old, or too new, or something in between. That's when I saw the inscription, carved in the rock in irregular, desperate letters. Next to Ahmet Dogan's name, the sentence didn't finish, as if whoever was writing had been interrupted. And below, in larger, trembling letters, I felt a chill run down my spine, because that phrase didn't make sense. We who feed it. Feed what? How? The phone light flickered. Battery, 3%. And that's when I heard it again. But not coming from the back of the tunnel, coming from behind me, from where I'd entered, the sound of breathing, slow, deep, blocking my only exit, and with it another sound, more subtle, almost imperceptible, footsteps, barefoot, dragging through the dust, approaching. There are decisions you make in milliseconds, without thinking, just reacting. And there are decisions you make conscious, that they might be the last ones of your life. That one was both. I couldn't go back. The sound was coming from behind, blocking the exit. Only one option remained. Move forward, deeper, to wherever that tunnel led. I turned and ran. No, running isn't the right word. The tunnel was too narrow. I squeezed forward, using my hands on the walls to propel my body, shoulders scraping on rock, backpack hitting the low ceiling. The phone light bounced violently, creating dancing shadows that seemed to have lives of their own. Battery, 2%. Behind me, the footsteps continued. They didn't accelerate, they didn't need to. They were constant, patient, as if they knew I had nowhere to go. The tunnel began to descend more steeply. 30 degrees, 40, 50. I was sliding more than walking, using my hands to control the descent. The dust was getting thicker. It was no longer a thin layer on the floor. It was suspended in the air, visible in the phone beam like grey fog. Each breath burned. I coughed, tried to cover my mouth with my shirt collar, but the dust entered anyway. I felt the metallic taste on my tongue. I felt my lungs heavy, as if they were filling with liquid cement. Silicosis, I thought, like Ahmet Dogan. I'm going to die suffocated like him, but I couldn't stop. The tunnel finally leveled out and opened into another chamber, larger than the previous one, maybe 5 meters in diameter. The ceiling was high enough for me to stand. I stopped, leaned my hands on my knees, coughed violently, spitting dark saliva on the dust floor. Battery, 1%. I pointed the phone around, trying to quickly map the chamber before the light died completely. 3 tunnels leading out of there. One to the left, one to the right, one ahead, wider than the others. And in the center of the chamber, something that made my heart stop. A body, no, not a body. Remains of a body. Tattered clothes, exposed bones. A skull turned to the side, jaw open in an eternal silent scream. Beside it, an old backpack, rotted, with an identification plate still readable, Mehmet Yildiz, one of the archaeologists who disappeared in 1972. I knelt beside the remains, trying to ignore the smell or the absence of it. After 50 years, there shouldn't be a smell, but there was. Subtle, sweet, rotten. The backpack was open. Inside, there were still objects, a notebook, pages stuck together by moisture and time. An old flashlight, rusted, and something that glinted in my phone light, a cassette tape recorder. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It was an old model, heavy, metal, the type used by field researchers in the 70s. It had a tape inside. Would it still work? I pressed the play button. Nothing, dead. Batteries corroded decades ago. But then I saw something scratched on the side of the device with something sharp. I stored the recorder in my backpack. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe, evidence. Battery 1%, imminent shutdown warning. I needed to make a decision. 3 tunnels, 3 options. Which to choose? That's when I heard something that made all my rational reasoning evaporate. A voice, not behind me, not in the tunnels, coming from the walls, or from inside my head, or from both at the same time. It wasn't a word, it was a sound, a pattern, a frequency my brain desperately tried to interpret as language. And then, clearly, unmistakably, I heard my own name. Daniel. I froze, every muscle in my body locked. Because the voice wasn't human. Not exactly. It was my voice, my tone, my cadence, but empty. Like a recording played backwards and then corrected. Technically correct. Emotionally dead. Daniel. You came. I spun in circles, pointing the weak phone light at the walls. Nothing, just rock. Just symbols. Just dust dancing in the air. Daniel, you here? Who's there? I shouted. My voice echoed through the chambers, distorting, multiplying, coming back to me in overlapping layers. Daniel! Daniel! Ishil! And then the voice responded with the same words, in the same sequence, as if it was imitating me. Who's there? Who's there? Who? Echo. It was just echo. It had to be. But echoes don't anticipate. Don't respond before you speak. I took a deep breath, mistake again, dust filling my lungs, and forced my mind to work. I remembered something I'd read about cave acoustics. Chambers with specific geometries can create strange effects. Multiple reflections, harmonic frequencies, auditory illusions. Göbekli Tepe had ritual acoustic chambers. Stonehenge too, ancient places designed to create impossible sounds. Could Derinkuyu, boom, the phone light died. Dead battery, absolute darkness again, but this time worse, because now I knew I wasn't alone. There was at least one body here, and maybe something more. Daniel, choose. And the voice came from the left tunnel. Daniel, choose. No. Right tunnel. Daniel, choose. No. Front tunnel. All three directions at once, impossible, acoustically impossible, unless the entire chamber was a resonance box, designed, carved, to create exactly this effect, but by whom and when, and for what purpose? I pulled out the oxygen meter, pressed the button. The small screen lit up with weak green light. 17.2% low, dangerously low. Not enough to pass out, but enough to start affecting judgment, to create hallucinations, to hear voices that didn't exist. It's just the oxygen, I whispered. It's just the dust. It's just fear. But then I felt something, an air current, subtle, coming from the front tunnel. Air meant movement. Movement meant opening. Opening meant exit. Maybe. I took a step toward the front tunnel. And that's when I heard it for the third time, but not my voice. Another voice, hoarse, broken, real, coming from inside the tunnel. Don't come. He's waiting. And then a sound that wasn't echo, wasn't acoustics, wasn't hallucination. It was the sound of something heavy being dragged through the dust. Approaching, coming from the depths of the front tunnel, from where the air was coming, from where my only exit was. If you're still with me on this descent, leave your like, because what I found at the bottom of that tunnel changed everything I thought I knew about Derinkuyu. There's a moment in every dangerous exploration where you need to choose between two primitive instincts, fight or flight. But there, in that dark chamber, with a voice warning me not to advance, and the sound of something being dragged coming toward me, I realized there was a third instinct. Freeze! And that's exactly what I did. I stood motionless in the darkness, holding the oxygen meter as if that pale green light could protect me somehow. The screen illuminated my face, my arms, and nothing else. The rest was black void. The dragging sound stopped. The silence that followed was so dense I could hear my own heart beating, or I thought it was my heart, because the rhythm was wrong, too slow, too deep, as if my body was synchronizing with something external, with that breathing which had returned. Inhale, 7 seconds, exhale, 7 seconds, inhale, exhale. Daniel. The voice came from less than 2 meters in front of me, hoarse, real, human, but only technically. Who's there? I managed to ask, my own voice coming out trembling. Silence. Then slowly, as if each word cost immense effort, Simal, Arslan, archaeologist. Ankara. My blood froze. Cemal Arslan, the third man from the 1972 expedition. The one who was never found, along with Mehmet Yildiz, whose body I just discovered in the chamber behind me. "This is impossible," I whispered. "You're dead. You died 53 years ago." A long breath, wet, painful. "Didn't die. Not yet." My hands trembled so much I almost dropped the meter. I forced myself to think, to process. Cemal Arslan would be, in his 80s now, if he'd survived. If he'd been trapped down here for more than 5 decades. Impossible. Nobody survives that long without food, without water, without light, unless... "You, are you really here?" I asked, hating how my voice sounded childish, frightened. "Here, there, don't know anymore. The difference." I took a step back. My heel hit something, Mehmet's bones. I almost tripped. "What happened to you? What happened to Mehmet, to Ahmet?" A long pause. The breathing sound continued, but it didn't come from the voice. It came from the walls, as if the entire chamber was breathing around him, around us. We descended too deep, found the chamber. What chamber? The real one, the one that shouldn't exist. I felt the dust getting denser. I could see it now, even in the meter's weak light, a grey fog moving like smoke, undulating, forming patterns, spirals, the same spirals carved on the walls. Mehmet tried to return, couldn't breathe. The dust, it enters, doesn't come out anymore. I remembered the report. Ahmet Dogan dying suffocated 3 hours after leaving the tunnel, lungs full of microscopic dust. "And you? Why didn't you return?" Another silence. Longer. When he responded, the voice was different, more distant, more empty. "Because I descended to the end, and down there, the stone showed me." "Showed you what?" "That it doesn't breathe. Alone." Mehmet's phrase carved on the wall. "We who feed it." "What does that mean?" I pressed, taking a step forward now, forgetting fear for a moment. "Feed how? Feed what?" And then, for the first time, I heard something that could be laughter, dry, broken, without joy. "You are already feeding." I didn't understand, didn't want to understand. Each breath, each movement, each fear. The voice continued, weaker now. "The dust isn't just dust. It's memory. It's time. It's everything that got trapped here during millennia." I looked down at the grey fog at my feet, saw it undulate, rise, enter through my nostrils each time I breathed. And for the first time I noticed something terrifying. I wasn't coughing anymore. My lungs should be burning, should be rejecting the dust, but they weren't. It was as if my body was getting used to it, accepting, absorbing. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." "You feel it, don't you?" Cemal's voice asked, now almost a whisper. The calm, the clarity. It's the first phase. Mehmet felt it. Ahmet felt it. I felt it. First phase of what? My heart raced. I took 2 steps back, 3, 4, until my back hit the chamber wall. I needed to get out. Now, immediately. "Where's the exit?" I shouted. "Where's the damn exit?" "Tunnel. To the right. Follow the air." "But Daniel, what? You won't be able to. Climb fast enough. The dust is already inside you. The more you run, the more you breathe, the more you feed." "Then what do I do?" My voice came out almost as a scream, pure desperation. "Descend to the end. Face what's down there. It's the only way to exit." Really, exit. That doesn't make sense. Made sense. To the ancients, they knew that some doors only open from within. The meter's green light began to flicker. Low battery. I looked at the right tunnel, the exit Cemal mentioned. Fresh air was coming from there. I could feel it on my skin, but I could also feel my heavy lungs. My breathing getting harder, the dust accumulating. How much time did I have? Hours? Minutes? "Cemal," I called. "Cemal, are you still there?" No answer, just the sound of breathing, constant, eternal, coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And then, very low, so low it could have been imagination. "Good luck, breather." I stood there in the almost complete darkness with 2 choices before me. Climb, run, try to reach the surface before my lungs failed completely. Like Ahmet Dogan died, suffocated, screaming, full of terror. Or descend, go to the end. Face whatever was down there, in the chamber that shouldn't exist. The meter's light died, and in absolute darkness I made my decision. I turned toward the front tunnel, the deepest one, the one that led down, and I began to descend. Now tell me, would you have made the same choice I made down there? Leave your answer in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone on this descent. I used my hands on the walls, feeling the rock guide my path. The tunnel descended in a slow, almost hypnotic spiral. 5 degrees, 10:15. The incline was constant. Gentle enough to walk, steep enough to feel gravity pulling my body forward. The dust was thicker here. It was no longer fog, it was substance. I could feel its weight in the air, the resistance when I moved my arms, like swimming in murky water. And the breathing continued, but now it was synchronized perfectly with mine. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, as if the tunnel and I were a single organism. I no longer felt fear, and that, in some perverse way, terrified me more than anything else. I should be terrified, should be panicking, but there was a calm spreading through my body, warm, sedative, wrong. First phase, Jamal's words echoed in my mind. The calm, the clarity. I shook my head, trying to dispel the torpor. I focused on physical details. The texture of the rock under my fingers, smoother now, almost polished. The temperature colder, but not uncomfortable. The sound of my footsteps, muffled as if I was walking on thick carpet. No, not carpet. Accumulated dust. Layers and layers of it, years, decades, centuries, millennia. I stopped, knelt, ran my hand over the floor. The dust was at least 15 centimeters deep. My fingers sank like in fresh snow. And then I felt something solid underneath, not rock, something different, smooth, geometric. I dug with both hands, removing dust, revealing steps carved in stone with impossible precision. Not the irregular practical steps of Derinkuyu's upper chambers. These were uniform, perfect, each exactly the same height, the same depth, and they descended, much deeper than any official map showed. I stood and continued descending the steps. I counted as I walked. A nervous geologist habit. Always count, always measure, always document. 50 steps, 100, 150. With each step, the air changed. It became denser, growing pressure in my ears like when you dive deep in a pool. 200 steps. It found flat ground. I stopped, extended my arms. The space around me had changed. Narrow tunnel. It was open, vast. Behaved no close echoes, no immediate reverberations. A chamber, large. There had to be something that generated light, anything. All emergency chemical light, the kind you break to activate a luminous reaction, was there. I broke the stick. Ghostly green light flooded the space. Every rational thought in my mind evaporate. I was in the center of a circular chamber, as in diameter. The ceiling was a perfect dome, carved with impossible geometric precision, completely covered with the same spiral symbols I'd seen in the tunnels above, larger, more elaborate, and filled with that dark substance that looked like old blood. It was a structure, not an altar, not exactly. It was like a well, circular, diameter, and from the well's edge columns of dust rose. They didn't float, they rose, like water flowing upward. I approached slowly, holding the chemical light ahead me now, forming deliberate patterns, whirlpools, spirals on the walls. I reached the well's edge and looked down. There was no visible bottom, and from within that darkness came the sound, that deep breathing, constant, eternal source. The dust wasn't just rising from the well, it was being sucked into it, in columns, spreading through the chamber, and then being pulled back through 1,000 small fissures in the walls, converging back to that central void. Inhale, the dust rises. Exhale, the dust descends. My God, I whispered, and then I understood that was breathing. It was the entire system, deliberately designed to create a specific airflow. The tunnels above, the dome's geometry, all working together to create a massive Venturi effect. Ancient, sophisticated, impossible, but why? Who would build something like this, and when? 1,000 years old, maybe 4. But this seemed older. much older, and examined the stone. Oh, revealed marks I hadn't noticed before, not symbols, tools, tool marks. Perfectly straight lines cut in volcanic rock, exact 90-degree angles. No ancient civilization had technology for this. Not the Romans, not the Egyptians. Tools could replicate this precision in such hard rock, unless, read years ago, at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, just a few hundred kilometers from here. Structures over 11,000 years old, before agriculture, before writing. We knew about human civilization. What if Derinkuyu was older than we thought? System was from an era we didn't even have names to describe. That's when I saw the body, the well, partially visible at the edge of darkness, about 3 meters below. What remained of it, lying on its back, arms open, as if floating in invisible water, literally through, as if the body was porous or not completely solid. To know who it was, Cemal Arslan, or what was left of him. My first reaction was to recoil from that impossible vision, but my knees failed. Holding the chemical light, green light dancing on walls covered with symbols. But if he was down there, who had spoken to me in the previous chamber? The voice, hoarse. Not yet. I looked at the body again, this time forcing myself to really see, observe. 1970s. Cotton pants, work shirt, all in tatters now. The skin, just bones. But the bones were wrong. They weren't on the well floor, as if something invisible was holding them in the air. Remembering the inscription, and finally I understood. Posed volcanic rock. It was organic. It was fossilized memory. Down there, over millennia, people, animals, entire civilizations, reduced to microscopic powder and eternally recycled through that system. Each breath we took, we added more to the cycle. First phase, the calm. Were covered in grey dust. I lifted one to the light, still stuck to my skin. I could have sworn that they were moving, vibrating. I could choose the same fate. Descend into that well, let the dust consume me, integrate me. An echo, a memory, a voice in darkness warning future explorers, or I could try to climb. Ascended, 200 steps, then tunnels, then more chambers, then more tunnels. Surface, my lungs were already heavy, my breathing difficult. Effort now, but he'd also said something else. Face, what's down there? To exit, really, exit. I looked at the well one more time, and to understand what Cemal meant. It wasn't a metaphor, it wasn't philosophy, it was literal. Of that well, something the ancients knew, something Cemal had found. To really exit, not like Ahmet screaming and dying 3 hours later, was to discover what. He's protested but obeyed. I looked into the darkness inside the well, and took the first step inside. Made the same choice I made down there. Leave your answer in the comments. On this descent, there were no steps inside the well, no stairs, no handles or supports, almost polished, descending at a perfect vertical angle. I can't measure, looking at the darkness below. Still worked, but its light couldn't penetrate more than 3 meters down. Void, and that sound, that constant breathing coming from the depths down there, about 3 meters below the edge. An impossible angle, as if gravity didn't fully apply to him, or as if something was holding him. Feeling the dust enter, burn, settle, and began to descend. Feet against opposite walls of the well, creating pressure, moving slowly downward. Chimneying that I'd used in narrow cracks before, but never like this, never in the dark, like lead. I descended 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. I passed beside Cemal. See better, it wasn't just skeleton, a translucent substance covering the bones, like dried gelatin. So I could see particles, millions of them moving, circulating. The dust wasn't just passing through him, it was preserving him, maintaining him. Continued descending, 5 meters, 7, 10. The chemical light's glow began to fail. But because the dust itself was absorbing the light, each photon being sucked in, consumed, transformed. 15 meters, something solid, not floor, something different, soft, almost spongy, but swaying slightly. The surface under my feet gave a little, like walking on thick moss. Hands, It was dust, but compacted, pressed over so much time it had become almost solid. Upon years, millennia upon millennia, and it was warm. Glow was almost dead now, enough to see my own hands and nothing else. But I didn't need light to feel what was around me again. It was no longer a vertical well. It was a chamber, small, intimate. I could extend my arms and touch both sides, and it was pulsing, not visually. Little vibration, rhythmic sound that was now so loud it seemed to come from inside my own skull. Inhale, 7 seconds. My heart began to beat in the same rhythm. No, I whispered. No, no, no. My body wasn't obeying me anymore. The calm I'd felt before was intensifying, spreading, being injected directly into my veins. Second phase, I thought. Or maybe I said it aloud. I stumbled forward, hands extended, searching for what? An exit? An explanation? An answer? Wall. Not rock, not dust, metal, cold, smooth, geometric, surface mapping by touch. It was a plate, rectangular, by 30 centimeters wide, and on the surface, marks engraved, deep time, words. I traced the letters with my fingers, trying to read by touch, able to process, but I managed to decipher. Scientific team, 1963, don't enter here. Mehmet and Cemal. There had been another expedition, one that was never documented. Forgotten, erased. I continued mapping the wall with my hands, found more plates. Sistemi active, air system active, olumkul tehlike, mortal danger. Plate, something different, not Turkish, English. Ventilation chamber, do not seal. Catastrophic release. My brain struggled to process. Ventilation, system, release. This wasn't ancient, but it had been modified, studied by a scientific team in 1963. Desperate warnings. The chemical light went out completely. Total darkness. In the dark, began to detect something. A weak luminescence, very weak, and it in the air itself. Bioluminescence, no, it wasn't organic. Phosphorescence, maybe. Organic dust reacting with what? That ghostly light for orientation. And that's when I saw it. Chamber was an opening in the floor, not a well, a hole, irregular, diameter, and from inside it came wind. No, not wind, air, pure air, clean, fresh, air current rising, strong, constant, pressure below, forcing air up through that small hole. And then I understood everything. Underground city. It was a seal. A giant lid over something much deeper. Or be breathed. The tunnels, the chambers, the wells wasn't built to let people breathe. And the dust. The dust was the filter, capturing everything that rose. Escape, recycling, preserving, containing, catastrophic release. If the system failed, if the dust filter disintegrated, whatever was down there would rise. I entered the tunnel. I felt real fear again. Not fear for myself, because now I understood why Cemal had said the only way to exit was to descend to the end. Never was. It was about understanding, witnessing, and then choosing, seal or open. I knelt there at the edge of that hole, feeling pure air rising against my face. Hours. I breathed without feeling dust entering. The air coming from below was different, ancient. As if it had been trapped for too long, as if it was desperate to escape. Even in the weak light of phosphorescent dust, I could see they were grey, covered, every pore, every line, every nail. Hours, minutes, choice that Cemal, Mehmet and Ahmet didn't have, because I understood the system. Hole, spread through the chambers, was recycled through the tunnels, and eventually descended back. Geological lung, but the cycle was slow. I could feel it now. The breathing was heavier. The system was failing. What if I was just one more body added to the mass? Or I looked at the hole again, at that current of pure air rising. Cleaned the system. Remove what was blocking, restore the flow. But that would mean the opposite wall. Found another plate by touch. Emergency purge. Use only if system critical. Warning, removes all organic matter. Found what was below the plate. A lever, old, rusted. But still there if I pulled, the system would be purged. The dust, the bodies, Cemal, Mehmet, and me. But the system would be clean, restored. 1,000 years. or 10,000 from whatever was breathing down there. I gripped the lever with both hands. Again, not Simal, not from inside my head, coming from above, from the well. A human voice, real, alive, shouting my name. Someone had descended after me. Possible choice. Pull the lever and save the system, but kill whoever was up there. Warn them, and risk the system failing completely. My fingers tightened on the cold metal. The lever resisted. 52 years of rust and dust had welded the metal in its position. My arm muscles protest, but it didn't move. Now, it was a female voice, young, with a Turkish accent, but speaking in English. My heart raced, both from sudden hope of not being alone and from terror of what that meant. "Here!" a hoarse, broken. "I'm down here. Don't come down." Silence for a moment. "I'm at the well. I'm coming down." "No," I shouted, desperate now. "Don't come down!" Breathe the dust. But I heard the sound of someone descending against the well walls, the kind of sound I myself had made minutes or hours ago. Hole I'd descended through. Looked up. Darkness. I could see a light, weak, yellow, a real flashlight with working battery. "Stop! Understand? If you come down here, you won't be able to go back." The light stopped. Closer, maybe 10 meters above me. Dr. Kayra sent me. Didn't come. Said you wouldn't last more than 6 hours. Kayra. He knew all along what would happen. "How long has it been?" Strangely in the confined space. "How long since I went down?" Voice. "You entered yesterday morning. It's almost midnight now." 14 hours. Seemed like it had been an hour, 2. Time was distorting. Another symptom, another phase. I asked. Elif Yilmaz. I'm a geology student at the University of Ankara. Dr. Ankara. The same university as Ahmet, Mehmet and Simal. To keep my voice calm, rational. You need to climb back up, now, before it's too late. To explain. How to make someone understand something I myself barely comprehended. And choosing words carefully. Isn't ordinary dust. It's organic, or was organic, here over millennia, decomposed and recycled. It is your lungs and begins to change you. Silence up there. Then, Doctor. Archaeologists from 1972, about the silicosis, about Ahmet Dogan dying suffocated. I brought masks, she replied. 100 filter masks, 2 masks, modern equipment, protection, that before descending, because I'm an idiot, because I was obsessed. If I could control something uncontrollable, feeling a strange emotion rising, something between gratitude and despair. If you have masks, you can climb up safely. I don't know if I can anymore. Why? Because I've been breathing this dust for 14 hours. It is changing. I can feel it. Was it? Was all this just hallucination? At the grey dust covering every inch of skin, at the particles that seemed to vibrate, move, live, up there breathing relatively clean air, with a working flashlight and a protective mask, simply unable to comprehend what I was feeling. She asked. Kayra said there's a chamber the 1963 team studied. Yes, I replied, I found it, and I found something more, a system that's failing. Failing how? It's clogged with bodies, accumulated over centuries, and if it fails completely, what happens? Or at that current of pure air rising from the depths, I don't know. 1963 left a warning, catastrophic release. Whatever is down there. Elif was silent for a long moment, then Kayra was right. You really believe this? I think you're intoxicated, hypoxic, delirious. Put a mask on you, and we're going to climb up together, okay? Before you come down, I need you to do something for me. What? Connected to some kind of purge system. Think it'll clean the system. Remove all accumulated organic matter. Restore airflow. Because if I pull that lever, I'm going to die. Here will be removed, purged, including me. Another silence, longer this time. Finally, her voice softer now. You're talking about suicide. I'm talking about a choice. And old plates you can barely read in the dark. She was right, correct. But Elif, do you know the history of Derinkuyu? Why it was built from invaders? And why build so deep? 8 official levels, 9 unofficial, maybe more. Hide from armies on the surface. She didn't answer. From something above, I continued. They were containing something below. It's observation, based on physical evidence. Is for efficient habitation. They're organized for airflow. Giant ventilation system. Have a purpose. To control what enters and what exits. Descend again. She was coming. Elif, stop! No! She replied, firm now. To give you the mask, and we're going to climb up together. Hydrate and see a doctor clear. She was 5 meters from me now. In the light of her own flashlight. Young, thin, with a large backpack on her back. Mask covering half her face. Not yet. Elif descended the last meters and landed beside me. Back and opened it, pulling out a mask identical to the one she wore, and extending it to me. I took the mask. It was heavy, well-built, industrial filters. Really block microscopic particles. I looked at it, at that piece of equipment that could save me. On the wall. Elif, I said without putting on the mask, do you feel it? Feel what? Else, the entire chamber breathing. She looked around, confused. The tunnels. Venturi effect, basic physics. It is, I agreed. Basic physics. Intentional. By people who knew exactly what they were doing. I took a step toward the lever. You need to climb up, I said, keeping my voice calm. Now, before I pull this. She moved between me and the wall. You're delirious. You're not thinking straight. I have in years, I replied. And it was true. The fear, despite everything, there was crystal clarity in my mind now. It's to be done. Elif didn't move. Her eyes, visible above the mask, were determined. She said, you'll have to go through me first. And that's when I heard it. Not Simal's voice, not anything I expected. A roar, deep, visceral. The air current increased in intensity, transforming into wind. Strong, powerful. Made my blood freeze. Smell, not of decomposition, not of rock or dust. Smell of sulfur, volcanic gases, and then from the impossible depths below us came light, red, growing, rising, whole. Her flashlight illuminating the edge, something that shouldn't exist. The dust was moving, or subtle spirals. It was organizing, forming, taking shape, like fingers or tentacles, extending from the depths, reaching, searching, rising toward us. Elif froze, completely, and the beam of light cutting through columns of dust that now twisted like living serpents. That, she whispered, voice muffled by the mask. I didn't answer, because I had no answers. None of them rational, none of them comforting. Rising from the hole. It wasn't fire, not exactly, it was more like an incandescence of glowing, and with it came heat. Heat that shouldn't exist at this depth, I muttered. My geologist brain desperately trying to find scientific explanation. Pressure chamber, superheated gases. But even as I spoke, I knew I was lying to myself. Form patterns. Gases don't organize into deliberate structures. Now 2-3 meters tall, undulating like seaweed in underwater current, definitely had pattern. What my brain insisted on calling them began to extend out of the hole, sliding over the edge, spreading across the chamber floor. Then another. Her back hit the opposite wall, her voice rising an octave. Daniel, we need to get out, now. But I couldn't move, something that contradicted everything I'd learned in 8 years of geology, in 37 years of life. They moved with intention, and they were, searching, touching the walls, the floor, in an unknown space. One of them brushed my boot. I felt it, not a physical touch. Dust was, reading, absorbing information, memory, experience. Unmistakably, I heard a voice, not with my ears, with my mind. Breathe them. Welcome, pulling my foot away from that thing's reach. I could hear it echoing in my temples. Did you hear that? The answer before she even responded. Heard what? All eyes wide. Are you talking to yourself now? So it was just me, dust, because I was more integrated with the system, or because I was completely insane. Now there were dozens of them, filling the chamber floor, climbing the walls, hence revealing details I preferred not to see. Inside those organized structures there were larger particles, Fragments, pieces of bone, of years of organic matter, all mixed, all recycled, all still, active, whispered, understanding arriving like an electric shock. It's not a mechanical system, something between alive and dead, a superorganism made of everything that's ever died here. Liv shouted, "We need to climb now." She was right. Rationally, she was completely right. Again, with its warning, "Emergency purge removes all organic matter. If I pulled now, order Liv, fast, much faster than the others." She jumped to the side, but not fast enough, and she screamed, not from pain, from shock, from pure terror. I saw these. I saw people, so many people, all screaming, all trapped, as if she wanted to rip it off, as if she couldn't breathe. "Don't remove the mask. Elif, look at me, keep the mask on." But she wasn't listening to me, fixed on something only she could see. The visions, the memories contained in the dust. And now she was seeing what it was, thousands of years of imprisoned consciousness, recycled, fused into a single impossible entity. Shoulders shaking her. "Elif, come back, focus on me." She blinked, but there was still terror in them, terror and understanding. "You were right," she whispered. "Natural, this is ancient," I finished, "much older than Derinkuyu of this. To contain it." More roots emerged from the hole now, so intense we could see every detail, the particles moving inside the dust columns, organizing into increasingly complex patterns. Not human, not animal, but intelligence. What does it want? The answer came, not in words, but in sensation. Appeared in my mind. Freedom, expansion, unfiltered breathing, return to surface. Been contained, trapped, forced to recycle its own being through that ventilation system. Enough to descend so deep, but the system was failing, the filters clogged. Containment chamber finally accessible, with new victims bringing fresh energy, fresh consciousness. I looked at the lever again, then at Elif. "Can you climb up alone?" I asked. "What? No! You have the mask, you have the flashlight, before your lungs are too compromised. And you—" I didn't answer, didn't need to. Using firmness, "I'm not letting you kill yourself based on hallucinations." "Not hallucination," I said calmly, pointing to the dust roots that now covered half the chamber floor. "Felt it. Then let's climb up together and bring help. Real scientists, proper equipment, gaining strength. How long until it forces its way through the upper tunnels?" Elif didn't answer, because she knew I was right. "Knew," I continued. "That's why they built the system. Team installed the purge mechanism as last resort, as Kogu final sacrifice." Now the thickness of my arm began moving toward us, deliberately, consciously, pushing her toward the well. "Now, Daniel!" She hesitated for just a second. She began climbing, using the well walls to propel herself, gradually diminished, rising, leaving only the red light from the hole to illuminate me. The roots stopped moving toward me, as if they knew, as if they understood what I was about to do. And clearer now, stronger. "No," I replied aloud, walking toward the lever. "I won't join you. You don't understand. We are necessary. We are balance. Suffocates." I stopped, because that phrase triggered something in my mind. Balance. What if it wasn't containment? What if it was symbiosis, but a function? Breathing, processing, recycling dead organic material back into the system. Seal it out of fear, but to protect it. To ensure curious humans wouldn't destroy it. "Lie," I whispered, but my voice was weak, uncertain. "Truth. Climb, see everything, all memories, all history, and then choose." If had disappeared into the well's darkness, safe, climbing. I looked down, formed a living carpet around me, and I looked at the lever, rusted, waiting. Two choices: the 1963 scientists, Derinkuyu's builders, millennia of containment attempts. I closed my eyes and made my decision. I released the lever and took a step toward the roots, not from confidence, because I needed to know. I was in those depths. After everything I saw, everything I felt, I couldn't destroy something I didn't fully understand. Biggest mistake of my life. or saving something essential, I'd only find out one way. Extended my hands and touched the roots voluntarily. The impact was instantaneous. Touched accidentally, a glimpse, a flash of terror. It was total immersion of pure memory. I saw, not with my eyes, with something deeper. I saw Earth before humans, volcanoes being born, and below everything, permeating everything, that network, that organism, recycling, processing, transforming death into life, life into death, in an eternal cycle. Not the known ones, others, previous, that understood that organism. Access points, that called it divine, not from cruelty, but from understanding, feeding the cycle, maintaining balance, not as refuge, not originally, as temple, as interface, communicate with Earth's deep lung, but then change. I saw when fear came, demonic, when they tried to seal it, bury it, make the world forget. I saw the 1963 team, 17 Soviet and Turkish scientists working together in secret during the Cold War, trying to understand and failing. A planetary organ with instruments made to measure human things. Installed the purge lever. Others tried to protect, to keep people away from the organism, but to keep the organism protected from people. In Shamal, I saw the exact moment they descended beyond the point of return. Running back, his lungs already compromised. I saw him fall, dissolve, merge with the dust. I saw Ahmet managing to reach the surface, trying to warn. But I also saw the dust inside him continuing its work, slowly, inexorably. He was no longer fully human, no longer fully separate, and I saw Chimal I was about to make. He didn't flee, didn't fight, descended voluntarily to the bottom, and in return, understanding, perspective. He became bridge, guardian, the one who spoke to future explorers, trying to make them understand. But Chemal was alone for so long, 53 years maintaining solitary vigil, and now there was another. Me, breather. But you see now, he said, you understand, he said, we are filter, not threat. We maintain balance. Without us, organic material accumulates, rots, releases gases, poisons aquifers, and balances underground systems. And I saw it was true. The organism wasn't parasite, it was saprophyte, decomposer, like fungi in forest, like bacteria in soil. Essential, necessary, but I also saw the danger. I saw what would happen if it grew uncontrolled, if it reached the surface, not apocalypse, not monster consuming humanity, but change. The dust would spread, slowly, incorporating into soil, into air, into people, not destroying but altering, merging, making boundaries between individual and collective more tenuous. Some would call it transcendence. Others would call it extinction of individuality. I didn't know which name was correct. When I finally opened my eyes, I didn't know how much time had passed. Minutes, hours. I was lying on the floor, surrounded by dust roots. They weren't touching me anymore, just around, like respectful guards awaiting decision. I stood slowly. My lungs were still heavy, but there was a clarity in my mind that hadn't existed before. I understood now why Samal said the only way out was to descend to the end. It wasn't about physical survival. It was about understanding, about seeing the big picture, about making an informed choice, not based on fear or ignorance. I looked at the purge lever one more time. I could destroy everything, clean the system, kill the organism, or at least put it to sleep for a few more centuries. Or I could let it continue, trusting that the ancient containment mechanisms would still work, that Derinkuyu would still serve its original purpose, not prison, but controlled interface. Or there was a third option. Samal's option. Stay, join, become guardian, keep vigil, be bridge between organism and humanity. I heard a sound from above, distant echoes of voice. Elif, she'd come back, or maybe never left. I looked at the roots. They moved aside, opening path to the well. Choose, breather. Stay or go. Protect from within or from without. Both are necessary. Both are valid. If I climb, I said aloud, the dust in my lungs. Will I die like Ahmet? No, you went deeper, understood more. The dust in you is harmonized. You can live above, but you'll always know, always feel, always be partially ours. So I'd be living Link, someone who understood both worlds. Human enough to live on surface, connected enough to understand the depths. And if I stay, peace, perspective, eternity, but solitude, separation from everything you were, everything you could be. Elif's voice was closer. She was descending again. I made my decision. I walked to the well, looked up. I could see the light from her flashlight, still distant but approaching. I placed my hands on the walls, began to climb. Not quickly, my muscles protested, my lungs burned, but I climbed. Because there was another way to be guardian, not trapped in the depths, but free on the surface, documenting, protecting, ensuring knowledge wouldn't be lost again, ensuring future expeditions knew what really existed down there. Not monster, not treasure, but living organ of a living planet. "Thank you," I whispered. And I swear I felt something. Not voice, not touch, but recognition, gratitude, from a consciousness that was no longer completely alone. Because now there were two guardians, one in the depths, one on the surface. I continued climbing. I met Elif halfway. She was descending again, mask on face, determination in her eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, illuminating my face with the flashlight. I must have looked terrible, covered in grey dust, sunken eyes, pale skin. But I smiled. "I'm alive," I replied, "and I have a lot to tell you." We climbed together, slowly, stopping every few meters to rest. Elif gave me water, gave me the spare mask, but I refused. "It's too late for that," I explained. "The dust is already in me, but it's stable. It won't kill me." How do you know?" "Trust me." She looked into my eyes for a long moment, then nodded. "It took us 3 hours to reach the 8th level, 2 more to get to the surface. When we finally emerged, into fresh air, into dawn light, into the world above, I fell to my knees, coughing, spitting dark dust. But I didn't die. My lungs hurt, my breathing was difficult, but it worked. Elif took me to the hospital in Nevşehir. The doctors were confused. X-rays showed my lungs partially filled with strange material, but it wasn't progressing. It wasn't killing me. Dr. Kayra visited on the 3rd day. He entered the room, closed the door, and simply looked at me. "You descended to the end," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And came back." "Yes." "So you understand now?" "I understand." My heart stopped. "I've lived with dust in my lungs for 62 years, he said calmly. "It never fails completely, never kills me, just remains, remembering, connecting." "Why did you send me there?" I asked. "Why didn't you warn me properly?" "Because warning doesn't work," he replied. "People need to see, touch, understand. Otherwise, it's just conspiracy theory, madness. But when you experience it, he touched his chest, when you carry the proof in your own lungs, then you know and can choose." "Choose what?" "Whether to protect or expose, whether to keep the secret or share the truth." I stayed in the hospital for a week, then returned to the United States. I didn't publish my research, didn't talk to media, didn't write scientific articles about what I found, because I understood that some knowledge is dangerous, not for being false, but for being too true. Humanity isn't ready to know the planet breathes, that there's consciousness in the depths, that death isn't end, but transformation, not yet. But I documented everything in private files, in recordings, in detailed maps, for when we're ready, or for the next guardian. Because there will be others, there always are. People too curious, too exploratory, who'll descend deeper than they should. And when they descend, they'll find my documentation, my words, my warning. Not don't descend. But when you descend, understand what you're really finding. I still feel the dust in my lungs, especially at night, when it's quiet. I can hear very faintly that breathing, not from my depths, but from Earth's depths. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. The planet is alive, always has been, and now I know. Not completely, not like Shamal, but enough to remember, enough to protect, enough to wait for the day humanity is ready to join the breathing. Until then, I guard. as Kayra guarded before me, as others will guard after, the breathers, those who descended, those who returned, those who know. And now you know too. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? 3 months after returning from Derinkuyu, I woke in the middle of the night with a strange sensation in my chest. Not pain, not shortness of breath, but calling. I went to the window of my apartment in Boulder, Colorado, looked at the Rocky Mountains under moonlight, and noticed something I'd never noticed before. The earth beneath my feet pulsed, very faintly, almost imperceptibly, but it was there, breathing. And somewhere, not in Turkey, but below me, below Colorado, below all cities and forests and oceans, something responded. The deep lung. Not just in Derinkuyu, everywhere, the entire network, breathing together forever. Now tell me, would you have made the same choice I made down there? And more importantly, if you found this entrance in your own city, in your own life, would you descend? Leave your answer in the comments, because Earth is always breathing, and there will always be those curious enough to descend and listen. Thank you for descending with me on this journey. If this story touched you in any way, share it, not to frighten but to remember that we're all walking over something much greater, much older, and much more alive than we imagine. Until the next descent, each descent reveals a piece of the earth and a piece of the soul.